Welcome to Module 3 of the online training for the Raptor Monitoring Volunteer Program with Colorado Parks and Wildlife. In this module, you will learn how to follow the nesting protocol. Nest monitoring occurs during the breeding season in zones with nests. Zones without nests will continue with the non-nesting protocol throughout the year. The beginning of nest monitoring should coincide with the beginning of breeding season for the species in your park. Nests that are actively being used are monitored every 1 to 3 weeks for 30 minutes to 3 hours, depending on the species. During a nesting survey, monitor until you see nesting behavior or until the species-specific observation time frame is up, whichever comes first. Monitor all mapped nests, including inactive nests, destroyed nests, and potential nests, at least until June 1st. Potential and destroyed nests can be visited less often, but raptor monitors should visit the area occasionally, at least once per month, to monitor for new nesting activity. Raptors reuse nests from year to year, and the presence of a nest at that location in the past indicates suitable habitat that may attract another raptor to build nearby. Continue monitoring an active nest until you observe no nest activity on 2 consecutive surveys to be sure that the young have left the nest or to document a nest failure. This table shows nesting observation guidelines, including buffer distance, frequency, and duration for different raptor species. You can find this table on page 7 of the Volunteer Handbook. The information in this table, along with the breeding phenology table from Module 1, will help you create a monitoring plan for the species in your park. For example, if there was an active bald eagle nest in your park, you would start searching for bald eagles exhibiting courtship behavior in January or February, and once eagles are spotted by a nest, you would follow the nesting protocol until breeding activity completed in the summer. Using the information in the breeding phenology and observation guidelines tables, you would create a plan to monitor the nest every 2 weeks for 2 to 3 hours each time between approximately March and July. Remember, once you observe nesting activity, you can conclude your nesting observation. Let's use Stagecoach State Park to illustrate the timing of the monitoring protocols for different observation zones. If you are a raptor monitor in this park, you would use the non-nesting protocol year-round for all zones, and then switch to the nesting protocol during the breeding season in Zone 13 only, since that is the only zone with a nest. The specific timing of the switch would depend on which species used the nest most recently. For example, if it was a prairie falcon nest, the breeding season would start sometime around April, so you might want to start looking for courtship behavior or nesting activities in late March. This is the field data sheet for nesting surveys. A printable version of the nest monitoring field data sheet can be found in Appendix E of the Volunteer Handbook. Alternatively, you can download the Zoho Creator app to your mobile device and enter your data while you're in the field, but this only works if you have cell service in your park. You will learn about how to use Zoho in Module 4, and instructions are also provided in Appendix G of the Volunteer Handbook. Most of the fields on the nest monitoring field data sheet are self-explanatory. A few fields, though, can benefit from additional explanation. Is this a new nest? Circle yes if the nest you are recording observations for is not on any of your monitoring maps. The nest may be new if it is being built in the nesting season you're observing it, or if it was a nest that was built after trees leafed out and we didn't find it until leaves dropped in the fall, for example. Nest code. This is a 7-character code that is the unique name of the nest you're observing. We follow a naming convention that specifies the park the nest is in by a 3-letter code, the letter N for nest, and then a 3-digit number for the order that the nest was found. So for example, CHAN047 is the 47th raptor nest that we found at Chatfield State Park. Nest codes are specific to the stick nest, cliff location, distinct cavity, etc. that they were originally assigned to. So let's say that an osprey built a nest on a power pole. A power company removed the nest for safety reasons, both for the osprey and the power company, and installed the nest platform within 10 feet. The osprey built a new nest on the platform. This new nest would receive a nest number unique from the number of the now destroyed nest that was on the power pole, even though these 2 locations are so close together. This helps keep us organized when we're trying to understand the history of a particular nest location. Time start and time end. when you started your nest survey and when you ended your nest survey. Please enter this in military or 24-hour time if possible, without AM or PM. For example, 1 p.m. would be 1300. Equipment. What equipment did you use to observe the nest? Circle one. If you used more than one, circle the equipment that led you to your most significant behavior and nesting activity selections. Raptor species. Write down the common name of the raptor species you see at the nest during your survey. If you do not observe any raptors during the survey, please write down none, even if you know what species of raptor has used this nest in previous years or is even using it this year. Most significant behavior. There are 15 raptor behavior options. These are defined in the Volunteer Handbook, starting on page 11. They are listed in order of significance in terms of behaviors that provide the strongest evidence for raptor breeding in the general area. Circle as many behaviors as you observe. When you enter your data online, you will only be able to select the single most significant behavior. The behavior options are feeding young, an adult raptor giving food to fledglings, young that are no longer dependent on the nest site for survival. Raptors continue to care for fledged young for a period of time after they leave the nest. Nesting activity. Raptors were observed at the nest site. You'll expand on this in the next data field when identifying the specific nest activity behaviors. Copulation. A male raptor mounts a female when invited. Mating is brief and typically lasts only a few seconds. Courting. Courtship behaviors might include a male feeding a female, sky dancing, talon-locked display flights, perching close together, rubbing against each other, beak kissing, hunting together, or sharing prey. Territorial behavior. A raptor asserting their ownership of a particular area of land, perch, or nest site. Territorial behaviors might include vocalizing when another raptor flies over, circling and calling over their territory, aggressively chasing another raptor away from the area, undulating, threatening flights in the presence of another raptor, aggressive talon grappling, which looks different than courtship talon locking flights, or an aggressive perch posture with head and body upright, feathers on head and neck erect, wings slightly spread, and beak open. Eating, a raptor feeding itself. Disturbed or flushed. A raptor leaves abruptly when agitated. The source of the agitation could be human-caused or from other raptors or animals. Calling or vocalizing. Perched. Raptors observed perched on anything that isn't the ground or ice, for example, a branch, a light pole, or a rock outcrop. Hunting. A raptor exhibiting behaviors indicative of hunting for their preferred prey, such as an osprey hovering over water with its eyes on the water, an American kestrel kiting over a field, a northern harrier cruising low over a marsh with its face pointed down, or a red-tailed hawk perched on a power pole intently watching a prairie dog colony. Descriptions of preferred prey are listed in Appendix F of the Volunteer Handbook. A raptor perched on the ground, or a raptor perched on ice. Flying. A raptor flying in the vicinity of the nest location, close enough to consider landing on the nest. The final two options are self-explanatory: a deceased raptor, or no raptor species observed. Nest activity. There are 13 nest activity options, listed in order of significance. These options are similar to the behavior options, but they are limited to behaviors you might see at the nest. Like the significant behaviors field, circle as many behaviors as you observe, and when you enter your data online, you will only be able to select the single most significant behavior. The descriptions of these options are also listed starting on page 13 of the Volunteer Handbook. The nesting activity options include fledglings observed by the nest location. Fledglings are young birds that are no longer dependent on the nest site. Nestlings are observed in the nest, or nestlings are heard calling from the nest. Nestlings are young birds that remain in and rely on the nest to survive. Feeding young. Adults seen feeding nestlings or fledglings at the nest location. Recently fledged young will often return to the nest to be fed in some raptor species, especially eagles. Food exchange between adults. one adult brings a food item to the nest and gives it to the other adult. This could also be selected if one adult gives a food item to a second adult away from the nest, and the second adult then brings the item to the nest. The food item can ultimately feed an incubating or brooding adult and/or nestlings or fledglings. If this occurs before nestling, it's considered non-nesting courtship behavior. Incubation. An adult bird is sitting on the nest, presumably incubating eggs. Do not try to verify the presence of eggs in the nest unless they can be seen from outside the appropriate buffer distance. Nest building. Adults bring nesting material such as sticks, branches with greenery, or grasses to the nest site, or spend considerable time rearranging nesting material. Adults on the nest. Adults perched or sitting on the nest. This can be used when monitors are unsure if a raptor is incubating eggs. Adults near the nest. Adults perched in the same tree as the nest, or on a prominent perch within close flying distance of the nest. If another raptor were to fly by, they should be able to quickly and easily defend the nest location. Territory defense. The different types of territory defense were described earlier in the raptor activity section, but in general, these are behaviors that indicate a raptor asserting their ownership of a particular nest site. Destroyed. A nest is no longer present, but the substrate on which the nest was built is still intact. An example of a destroyed nest is a stick nest that was blown out of a cottonwood tree in a windstorm. Substrate and nest destroyed. Nest is no longer present and the substrate on which the nest was built is also destroyed. An example is a dead tree holding an American kestrel nest cavity that fell over. Finally, no nest activity observed. No raptors observed in the area of the nest exhibited any of these nesting activities or behaviors. Nest substrate. This is what the nest is built on. Explanations of various substrates can be found in Appendix C of the Volunteer Handbook. Data table. Record the number of individuals at the nest and their sex. Most of the time, you probably won't know the sex of the birds you're observing. Females do the majority of incubation in many raptor species, but males will occasionally help, and only American kestrels and northern harriers can be told apart by plumage. You also have space to record the number of nestlings, and eventually the number of fledglings you see in the area of the nest. The line between nestling and fledgling in raptors is a bit more blurred than other bird species. Young raptors engage in branching behavior, where they venture outside the nest into surrounding branches, and may even make short gliding flights only to clamber back to the nest later. As a result, a nest should only be considered fledged and inactive after observing no young using the nest site for 2 consecutive visits. Data from all nests surveyed, whether activity is observed or not, should be entered into Zoho database as soon as possible. No more than 24 to 72 hours should elapse between a survey and a data entry. However, please don't hold on to your data if it's been longer than this. Your data is always valuable. We'll learn how to enter your data in Module 4. While monitoring nests, volunteers should document any non-nesting raptor behavior as a non-nesting observation. For example, say you're at Highline Lake State Park, monitoring Nest 3 from an observation point in Zone 5, when you see a red-tailed hawk not associated with Nest 3 fly overhead. Record the red-tailed hawk flyover as an incidental, non-nesting observation for the zone in which you're located. In this case, the zone code would be HIG005, and the code for the nest that you're observing would be HIGN003 for Highline Lake Nest 3. This is a good example of why it's important to carry both nesting and non-nesting data sheets with you in the field. Even if you're out in the middle of a nesting survey, you should fill out a non-nesting data sheet when you see other raptors not associated with the nest exhibiting non-nesting behaviors, like the red-tailed hawk flyover example. Raptor monitoring takes time in order to be successful. If you don't observe activity, you might have to give it more time or come back and watch again, especially if it's a historic nest site. You might have to spend 2 to 3 hours watching a suspected nest site. The 30-minute minimum is only for nests that are known to be active. Start early in the season and get to know the area around the nest. Thank you for watching this training on the nesting protocol. If you have any questions, please contact the Resource Stewardship staff at the phone number or email listed here. Thank you.